comforting.
I'm going to grab a little bit of water.
Yeah, sure.
Water spills, it's not going to make any damage.
So, this week's a big week
All right.
in the Chabad calendar and for the Jewish world at large. On Shabbos, I mentioned a few minutes ago, is the yard site. The anniversary of passing of the Rebbe, 25 years ago, 1994. And the Rebbe was an incredible figure, incredible Jewish leader, came to America and rejuvenated Jewry post-Holocaust and interacted with Jews from every strata of life, from regular people, secular, all sects of religious Jews, politicians, Jewish, non-Jewish, in America and Israel, artists, celebrities, and the Rebbe was a figure that spoke to people. His teachings, his charisma, was something that touched people's hearts. And when it comes to a day of his passing, it's a time to reflect on who he was and what he stood for and what that can mean for us. In Jewish mysticism, especially in the Tanya, which is the primary work of Chabad, it says that on the day of a person's passing, the yard site is when all of their achievements during their lifetime is uplifted. So when a person passes away, in a sense it's a day of celebration. You're celebrating how much they achieved. It's like the culmination of everything, and now it's wrapped up. Their life is wrapped up. So that day, the day of their death, it's a very sad day for us. We lost a person. But essentially in the world of spirit, if we look beyond the immediate emotions, it's a day where we celebrate what that person stood for. And even deeper spiritually, there's the spirit of their achievements is present during that time. And every year in the yard site, the spirit of that soul and the spirit of everything that soul achieved is very present in the world. So a yard site today when we can reflect and connect with that energy, with that spirit. So this whole week is time to, personally, I'm reflecting a lot on the Rebbe as a Chabad Chassid. The Rebbe is my mentor. His teachings continue to guide me and guide a lot of our teachings, our classes there, at the source of them. So tonight as well, we're going to look at a unique teaching of the Rebbe. And I think the teaching we'll teach tonight can give a glimpse into the general approach of the Rebbe. In that one aspect of the Rebbe's philosophy, which permeated everything from his deep teachings to his life guidance and to his own personal decisions, was a deep positivity bias. The Rebbe was always looking at the positive side of people, of situations, and in regards to his understanding of Torah, always looking for the positive in each text and the positive in each character in the Torah. And this is to incredible guidance the Rebbe told people and gave people advice on looking at the positive. And tonight we're going to look at the positive of a very dark character. And we're going to see how we can turn the whole story on its head and look at the good side, understand the story differently, which sheds positive light on the protagonist. And that is Korach. This week's Torah portion, the rebel. Korach led an uprising against Moses. And he goes down in history as being the rebel. In fact, there's a verse in this week's Torah portion that says, don't be like Korach. And we understand to be a mitzvah. Don't argue, don't rebel. Don't get into arguments with people, right? Don't get into arguments. So, and that Korach remains this paradigm of argument. No, I'm following up from the stories of before where you didn't argue. Right, I'm supporting you. Wasn't good. So Korach is this paradigm of disagreement, of discord, and of rebellion. And if you think about it, we don't know the exact timeline. We don't have it here. And there's somewhat of disagreement in the commentaries. But it could be assumed that it's following up from the story of the spies in last week's portion, which we'll see in a moment why that fits in the reading of the text. The story of the spies happened about a year after the Exodus. So here we're a bit over a year after the Exodus. Moses had just, barely a year ago, taken a slave nation, given them the confidence, done miracles, helped them through this. Everything. They saw the hand of God through Moses. They witnessed Moses on the mountain with God, chosen by God. And now, a year later, and Korach comes and says, Moses, who gave you this authority? And he leads this rebellion. He gets people on his side, and they try making a coup. They try getting rid of deposing Moses and Aaron. The details of the story are very murky. And I wanted tonight look at this story from three different perspectives, or sort of three different levels. The biblical text, read at face value, a midrashic reading, so looking at some of the midrash surrounding the story, and then lastly a Hasidic reading, and primarily from the Rebbe. The plain text, I wish I could have printed out this whole story, the text, but I'll go through it quickly. Korach comes to Moshe and he gets a crowd together. We're told he has 250 people to start off with. And they approach Moses and he says to them, and to Aaron, he says, you've taken too much for yourselves. The whole entire nation is holy. Why do we need you to be on top of us? And Moshe gets very, he falls on his face as he gets very in despair. And then Korach, he tells Korach, you know what? In the morning, God will decide who is right. And he creates this test of sorts.
Is Leah here?
Yeah. That's why the kids are still not sleeping, as you can hear. He devises a test that each one of them will take a frying pan of incense, which was only done by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. You want to be high priests? Take one of these pans, and we'll see who God chooses to send the fire down to receive and accept the incense. But Moses warns them, be warned. Whoever is not the proper high priest, this is a capital offense. Offering incense when you're not supposed to. In fact, Aaron's sons, according to some commentaries, did exactly that and died a tragic death. So they were warned, but they went ahead with this. And Moshe tells them to Korach, you're a Levite. You're from the chosen people. You should be happy with the elitism which you have. Why do you want any more than that? And eventually they go back to Moses. Moses, you're good for nothing. You took us out of Egypt for what? To go to Israel? We're stuck in the desert now. We're not even going to Israel. So you're really not worthy of this leadership. So they go ahead and they take the frying pans. Tragically, they don't. Aaron's chosen. Then a second test Moses devises says, if I'm correct, Korach and his children who were involved in this rebellion and those close to him will die a supernatural death. God will create something new, a new form of death. And in fact, just then the ground opened up and swallowed Korach and his henchmen. So a little, just under their feet, ground swallowed them. And everyone saw Moses was correct. And Korach and his people were unwarranted in their attacks. That's the basic overview of the story as we have in the text. There's almost no indication of what Korach's issue was.
Yeah, that's what I learned now.
There's also conflicting indication as to who is he complaining against. Was it Moses, Aaron, both of them? And there's a lack of clarity of what he hoped to achieve. What was his goal here? What was his outlook that he wanted to impose on the community? What was the alternative vision? The text is very unclear, and there's conflicting messages. First it's against Aaron, and then it's against Moses, and then they seem to just be segueing back and forth. The Midrash has some beautiful insights into this text. And again, some conflicting. There are different viewpoints in the Midrash and the commentaries. But essentially, some read it as just against Moses, some just against Aaron, and some as against Moses and Aaron. And I assume it's against both. I want to take that approach. Because definitely there's mention of both ideas. Of the kahuna, the priesthood, which was Aaron's post, and of Moses being an unfit leader. And also Moses was, they had the issue of nepotism against him. They chose Aaron to be his brother to be the high priest. So what exactly was Korach unhappy with, and what did he hope to achieve? That's the real question here. So the Midrash says something interesting. The Midrash says, let's look at the context. Where is this coming from? At the end of last week's portion, we had the mitzvah of tzitzis. Together with the mitzvah of tzitzis, something that's not widely practiced today, is to have one of the strings of each corner dyed with the techeles dye. It was a unique dye, a bluish color, and one of the strings was dyed in that color. It's one of the part of the mitzvah tzitzis. The reason we don't do it today, I don't have any blue on my tzitzis, is because we lost sort of the art. We don't know exactly, it came from an animal, we don't know exactly what this dye is, and therefore we, instead of just coloring it random blue, we stopped doing it at all. There are some in recent times who think they have rediscovered this dye, and so you see some people wearing blue on their talis and tzitzis. So the Midrash says, Korach's complaint against Moses. Korach comes to Moses and says, Moshe, you tell us to have one blue string on the talis. Imagine I have a talis, the entire cloth of the talis, the whole clothing, the whole material is dyed with the chelas. Do I need that strand of blue on the string as well? Moshe answered, yes you do. He said, that's crazy. If one string is good enough for a regular talis, here the whole cloth is blue. Why should I need the string as well? They followed up with a similar question. He says, Moshe, if I have a room that's full of Torahs, full of Sifrei Torah, does it need a mezuzah on a doorpost? And right, the logic is, mezuzah is meant to have some sort of a passage of the Shema for the room. I have a room full of Shemas, full of passages of Torah. Do I need this symbolic, small little parchment scroll on the door? Moses says, yes, the law is you do. And again, Korach brushed him off. That's crazy. Doesn't make any sense. That's the Midrash. What do you make of this Midrash? A little cryptic.
Yeah.
What's it getting at? This is a halachic questions. How does that frame the...
Sort of like, is it the letter of the law or the spirit of the law?
Yeah.
Okay. So Korach was arguing the spirit of the law, Moses was sticking to the letter of the law?
It seems that way.
It could also have an inner and out aspect where he's saying if you have all of these Torahs inside, why do I need a mezuzah outside? Like if it's implicit, if it's within, why do we need this accoutrement outside?
Okay.
For that
So
particular...
if you have the idea, you don't necessarily need to practice.
Like the inside and the outside.
Okay? And the Midrash is, these are all good readings. The Midrash is getting to something else as well. Korach was telling Moshe, we all stood at Sinai. We all experienced revelation. Every Jew in today's community, every Jew alive, experienced the divine. We are a nation of holy people, of priests. Do we need a holy leader? Said, and usually you need a mezuzah on the doorpost. You need a strand of blue. If everything else is regular, you need one symbol, one figurehead, a leader to be there as a guiding light to the masses. We're all blue blood. We're all Torahs. We don't need a string of techeles. We don't need a mezuzah on a doorpost. Moses, we don't need you. Why do you assert yourself over the community as an authoritative figurehead, we should have equality. We should all be on equal footing. We're all Torahs, we don't do mezuzah. Moses' response, obviously his halachic response, has to reflect some sort of answer to the real argument of Korach. Was you do still need this figurehead. You still need this representative, this authority. What does that mean? Who would you say is correct in this disagreement?
Well, you always need a leader, even if you have a nation of priests. People are people, and disagreements will break out. You know, you need arguing over the halacha. You know, you need some authority that says, okay, this is the answer. You know, and or we should go north and not west, or whatever. You know, somebody has to make decisions. Somebody has to resolve disputes. You know, no matter how holy the people are. They're going to have arguments. You need some authority, otherwise things will break down.
So it's interesting. You bring up a very good point, and I think Korach would have understood that as well. In fact, what's very unclear in this text, there seems to be two conflicting messages Korach is giving Moshe. One is, out with the hierarchy. Out with you're above me or above anyone on any scale. Ultimate equality. Everyone is on the same level. Everyone's equal. On the other hand, he seems to be arguing that he should have the kahuna. Korach should be chosen for this job instead of Aaron. Which means, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a leader. I'm saying I should be the leader. So which you can't have both ways.
Yeah.
You can't tell Moses, there's absolutely no need for a leader, but I should be this leader. Right? That seems to be self-contradictory.
Yeah, it does.
It also seems when he says that we were all at the foot of Mount Sinai, it seems he's more like implying this was all revealed to everyone, so I don't see much room for him trying to assert that he should usurp the leadership of Aaron. It's more like we were all witness to this great revelation when Hashem comes down to us from the mountain. And I think he's saying basically that it was given then, so it doesn't need to be distilled through anyone's intellect. We were all there. I mean, I would beg to differ because everybody has different capacities to understand. So I'm not sure, I don't agree with that point for that reason. People have different capacities. But I think he's more like asserting, not so much he should usurp the role from Aaron. But just that we were all there, there's no need for you. You don't need to distill it for us. It was given, we all heard it, received it, done.
Okay. Yeah. And I think maybe if he was arguing for leadership, perhaps he was saying, let me be the leader and I will create a society with no classes, with no hierarchy. Right? So let me redefine leadership here. And maybe he was arguing for leadership, not that he can be in the position Moses was, but he can redefine what Moses' position should have been, perhaps.
Right.
That's the way to iron out this contradiction. But there seems to be this deep conflict, an ideological conflict between Korach and Moses. So if we step back for a second, the Midrash sheds light on this whole passage, that it wasn't just a power struggle, that Korach wanted to be in power. Why you choose Aaron, nepotism, choose me, my family deserves this honor. That's the simple reading is a real power struggle, which we know all too well is human nature. It's happened throughout history. Whenever there's someone who hasn't been chosen for power, and I want it. I want the honors. I want the authority. I want the power that comes along with the office, with the position. And he was upset that he wasn't chosen. He felt he was Moshe's cousin. He's in the same blood, from the same lineage. I deserve this position. That's the simple reading on the biblical text. The Midrashic text adds a little bit of depth that Korach actually had an ideological argument with Moses. Moses was saying that even if everyone is holy, there's still a need for this lighthouse, for the holier, the priests the prophet, someone who's going to stand above the crowd. And Korach said, once you have a holy community, we're all good. It's all beautiful. We have this individual relationship with God. We're all on equal footing. You can't tell me what to do. I can't tell you what to do. It's this kumbaya, right? Everyone's just living this higher living, and it's absolutely irrelevant. It's superfluous to have a mezuzah on this door, to have a figurehead of a priest. It's just power which you want for yourself, Moses, and it's unnecessary in the community. So it's more of an ideological, how do we structure the community? And we can, look at parallels in modern politics as well. Not that I want to go there, not like modern, but in political theory, there's a lot of different ideas of how nations should be structured and different philosophies as to how much there should be a hierarchy of government controlling and making decisions for people to create a society, or how much should be a small government and allow, well, this is the people. People are going to create a society of their own, and government should just be minimizing damage. So you have this sort of obviously very different, but played out. It's a political struggle here. Not that Korach wanted personal power, but a different political agenda. He felt there should be a different political vision for the Jewish people. They're all holy. We should be a community on our own of lay people, and that's the way the community should be structured. There are a lot of other midrashim, but we can go on forever with the midrash on this. It's worth, if you have a chance during the week, just Google midrash and Korach, and or open a midrash, or Sefaria. I don't know if you're familiar. A beautiful, very important reference. Sefaria.org. SEFARIA.org. It's an online library that is incredible.
I've used it.
And it has interlinked texts, which is its big feature. Besides the fact it has an incredible resource of translated text. If you go to a certain verse, it'll show you on the side, you can reference all the midrash, the Talmud, everything that quotes that verse, the commentaries. Click on that Talmud, it'll tell you the commentaries on that Talmud and other passages in Talmud that are related to it, and you can just keep going on and on to different passages. An incredible resource, which I definitely recommend for looking up any Torah. So let's leave it there, though, as an overview of the Midrashic take in this text. Now I want to look at a Hasidic take. And again, even within the Hasidic canon, so to speak, there's variant ways to look at it. But I want to take one approach. It's fascinating, I think. And it's rooted in the very first word of this parasha. I'll read the first verse to you, and I'm going to ask your opinions how to make sense of this word. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi. Korach, who was a son of Yitzhar, who was a son of Kahas, the son of Levi, took. V'dasan va'aviram, and Dasan and Aviram b'nei Eliav, who were the children of Eliav. V'on ben Pelas b'nei Reuven, and On the son of Pelas, who were from the tribe of Reuven. Vayakum lifnei Moshe, they came before Moshe, v'anashim b'nei Yisrael chamishim masayim, with 250 people from the nation. Nesiyei Eda, leaders of the tribes, Kuriyei Moed, people who were summoned for the assembly, Anshe Shem, men of reputation. Then he goes on to tell us what they did. The first word, by Yikach Korach, Korach took. Doesn't say anything that he took. What did he take? It says, Korach took, and this person, and that person, and this person, and that person. What did he take? So some read it as, he took those people, means he had to sort of schlep people along.
Yeah.
But doesn't fit so well into the words. It says, and Korach took and these people, instead of and Korach took these people. The and there seems to divide it. Rashi says Korach took himself aside. He separated himself from the mainstream. He took a stance. But there's another interpretation, which is based on the Aramaic translation from Onkelos. Uncles translate Vayikach here V'ispalig, and he divided. And it says that Korach created division. The way that's explained in this Hasidic text, not just that Korach created an argument which divided the nation. Korach's intent was to create division. So not only did he actually divide the nation because he's trying to get power, his intention was to create division. But what division did he want to create?
Yeah, why?
Why? But more than why, what? He wanted, we read the text, he wanted less division, right? He wanted less hierarchy, more equality. So what exactly did he want to divide? One more clue in the text. When Moshe hears Korach's complaints, he says, in the morning, Boker, in the morning God will tell. Why wait till the morning? This is serious. This is a massive, the biggest. Moshe had complaints before, and every time he complained from the Jews, he went to God and says, God, I can't handle this. You sent me with these Jewish people, right? To the point we saw last time, Moses tells God, God, enough, take my life. I can't handle these Jews. Here, Korah comes with the biggest rebellion, personally directed at Moses.
And we'll sleep on it.
We'll sleep on it. Let's see in the morning. What's going on? So the Midrash says something fascinating. It says, Boker. He wasn't saying only wait till morning. The Midrash says, just like there's morning and night. Two passages in time that are divided, which means God created a world. He didn't create a continuum of time. He created morning and night, which are clearly differentiated by the sunlight, by people being awake and sleeping. So too, God created the world. There should be differentiations between people. So you're arguing from ultimate equality doesn't mean that everyone's the same. Equal doesn't mean the same. And Boker was telling Korach, there's morning and there's night. Yes, everyone's special. Yes, everyone's unique. But there's still night and day. There's still different people have different roles. And there still has to be divisions within the community. In fact, in order to have a unified community, you have to have divisions. When you have a team, if everyone knows their role, the team can be cohesive, one unit. Everyone works together as one. If everyone's doing the same thing, role managers, right? Everyone's in charge, then no one can work together. We don't fit anywhere. There's no symmetry. There's nowhere that we can click. And so only when there is divisions between classes, between sectors, between breaking up the people into different spiritual and also practical, political positions, roles, that's when we can have equality. So Moshe was telling Korach, just like this morning, he was actually not just pushing him off, he was answering him philosophically, ideologically, answering his complaint. So here's a Hasidic take with this background. And if you were here last week, this will flow directly from last week, because Korach comes right after the episode of the spies. And here's the way the Rebbe explains it, I think is beautiful. The mistake of the spies we explored last week, and the basic way we understood it was that the spies wanted to remain separated from worldly affairs. They didn't want to engage in politics, in war, in societal concerns. We're happy to live in the cloud, happy to remain aloof, spend time in the desert, separated from all responsibilities. And they had made a mistake. God took them to task for it. We're supposed to go to Israel. We're supposed to engage in the material world. We're supposed to create a society. That's how we encounter the deepest God, right? The deepest experience we can have is through the mitzvahs, through the ground, actual action, behavior, living the philosophy and not just philosophizing the philosophy. On the heels of this, Korach comes and says, oh, if that's the case, if the main point is action, is in how we behave, how we interact with the material world, that's where God is found. If so, Moses, you're really unnecessary. In practically doing a mitzvah, we're all the same. The smartest, deepest spiritual person hands charity to a poor person the exact same way an ignorant fool will hand $1. The poor person gets the same dollar. So if the bottom line is doing good, the bottom line is how we interact with the material world, how we find God within the reality of living the lifestyle that's necessary to create a society. If so, we're all equal. I understand Moses on a spiritual quest, in Torah study, in connecting with spiritual ideas, there's a hierarchy. I understand that in developing some sort of, real spiritual politics, we have to have a priest, we have to have a prophet. But you're telling me the spies made a mistake. It's all about settling Israel. It's all about doing the mitzvahs in the practical life. If so, Moses, if it's about action and behavior, we don't need spiritual guides. We don't need priests doing holy service in the temple. That's not what it's about. So he took the mistake of the spies and he translated it into practical ramifications. He says, Moses, God wasn't happy with the spies. God had an alternative vision. God wanted us to encounter Him in the material world. Don't try schlep us out of that and inspire us with Torah knowledge. Don't try inspiration. Inspiration is antithetical to Judaism, he said. Inspiration means when I'm being dragged beyond my regular interaction with the world and having a spiritual moment. I'm being inspired. I'm seeing things differently. I'm escaping the material. I'm escaping my life. Korah tells Moshe, inspiration is not what God wants. He wants, go ahead, go to work. Go live, do mitzvahs. Be kind to people. Give charity. Put on that tefillin. Do the actions, the behaviors. That's what God wants. For Aaron to be the spiritual figurehead, it's only distracting people. For Moses to be a spiritual figurehead, you're only distracting people. You're secondary. When God created the world, it says He created the upper waters and the lower waters. Now, that means on a practical level there's sort of different the atmosphere and the water. But in Kabbalah, the upper waters and lower waters is a reference to spiritual pleasure. Water is a pleasure, spiritual delight, spiritual insights, and material pleasure. So it's this division, upper waters. God created these two sectors, two elements, two dichotomy between the material and the spiritual. And we tend to think of Judaism as being a marriage between the two. And the ideal is to create this fusion of bringing the spirituality into the material world. Korach had an extreme worldview based on what he saw with the spies. He says, no. God wants you just to live in the material. Because if the deepest encounter with God, as we explored last week, is within the material world, then just invest in the material world. If God is in the mitzvah, if God is in building a society that's just, then that's where we should focus our efforts. That's where we're going to encounter God. And so he wanted to create a division between the spiritual and the physical. Let's just have the material. That's where it's at. Don't sell me spiritual ideas. Don't distract me with these beautiful concepts. Let's just do in the here and now. Live that way. That's Vayikach. He wanted to create the vision. He wanted to just find the latent spiritual potential within the material world, within regular encounters that we have. That's what came out from the spies. And that's what he said, if the talus is fully blue, means you have everything in the action, in maybe in the inside. Not so much inside and outside, but it's almost the opposite, but you're doing all the right things. Right. So you need that string of inspiration. You have a room full of Torah scrolls, right? Which means you have encountering God on the deepest level. Do you need a ray of inspiration? Do you need a mezuzah that's shedding some divine light? You have the deepest divinity within the material. Here's where it's at. And Moses countered him. He said, you have a point, but you're wrong. And here's why. In short, and very simple idea. Even if you want to argue that the most important thing is being kind, the most important thing is finding God within everyday activities of discovering the deep spiritual and divine potential in everyday objects, and that's the deepest. You can only do that if you're above the material world. If you're part of it, then you only see the material. There's no virtue in engaging in the world if you're part of the world, right? You're never going to find God in the world if you're part of that material ecosystem. If you're trapped in that same trappings as the whole entire world, you can't look deeper, you can't have a deeper perspective of reality. You have to rise above it in order to be able to dive deep into it. Right? Like, you come up for a breath of air, and then you can dive underwater and see what's there. If you become part of the fabric of the world, then you're just another piece of that puzzle. You haven't created any sort of order to the chaos. You're part of the chaos. But if you're able to see something deeper, you rise high, you have that moment of inspiration, you have that background, spiritual background, then you can come into the world and engage within the world, living higher. And so even if Korach was correct in his basic ideology, that yes, God is encountered within the world, you have to have a background, you have to have some sort of inspiration and guidance from beyond the world, and then bring that into reality, into society, into our everyday living.
Sort of like the letter, the difference between, like you had said, the hey and the ches. The hey has the little aperture in the top left corner to allow, it's a two-way street, and the chet, or ches, is closed.
No escape.
So it's like Clorox.
So you're touching on a fascinating idea, and it's beyond this class to get into it. But the Rebbe explains the name Korach, because Hey is God's name. Hey is a reference to God. It's the perfect shape. Beyond now, each line, the 3 lines of the Hey is thought, speech, and action. And why the actions are smaller. Every letter of Korach's name, Kuf, Reish, and Ches, they're all exactly a Hey with one small variant. In the Kuf, the line of the Hey goes a little lower. In the Reish, that line is missing. In the Ches, the line is full. And they're all 3 variations, slight variations from the ideal in 3 different ways. The line is longer, missing, or higher. And those reflect 3 sort of paths that Korach went wrong, 3 directions Korach went wrong. But I'm only saying that because you mentioned it, but that's a little deeper than we're going to dive here. But it is interesting how everything's reflected in the names, the letters. So the idea is that Moses was saying, yes, who is the most important? The foot soldier. But the foot soldier can only do his job when you have a general. Who's the most important? Moses? Yes, every single one of these Jewish people are holy people. And the person who's working the 18-hour shift as a janitor is doing the most important work, just as important, if not more important, than the scholar who's studying in the Beit Midrash. He's encountering God in a deeper way, perhaps, than the person who's encountering God through mystical texts. Right? But the only way this janitor can do that is if he spends an hour a day with mystical texts. Or if he has guidance from the person who's invested in the mystical texts. Then the janitor can encounter God within cleaning the floors. But if the janitor is on his own, no access to anything higher, he's only going to encounter dusty floors. Right? So Moses said, I agree this nation's a holy nation. And everyone in their way is equal. Means is holy, equally holy. And I find God throughout my direction in my life. You find God in your direction in your life. And we're all equal. Which means my path to God is no deeper, no more profound or more true than your path to God. When you encounter God, whatever you are doing. And that can be someone who's finding God in spiritual pursuits, in material, in the world. If someone, wherever someone feels God in their life, that's equal. The nations, Kulam Kadoshim, they're all holy. But Moses said, in order to sustain that, there has to be the spiritual leaders. So the spiritual leaders, even though there's a hierarchy, they have authority, they're higher. That just means, practically, in order for everyone to be equal, you have to have this hierarchy. So Moses says, I'm no greater. I have no greater relationship with God than the simple layman. But I'm higher in the spiritual hierarchy, which allows us all to have equal access to God. And that was the argument Moses made. Yes, there's a room full of Torahs. You still need a mezuzah to maintain those Torahs. Yes, there's a beged, a cloth that's fully dyed with techelet. You still need that string. So what this teaching does is a number of things. Number one, it gives Korach a lot of benefit of the doubt. Korach had a very deep spiritual understanding, deep spiritual ideology, and was the best intentions in mind, really felt he's helping bring the world closer to perfection. This is the way of redeeming the world, of finding God within the world in the deepest level. And he was correct. Eventually, that's the goal. We're not there yet. We need the inspiration. So he had maybe he was ahead of his times, ahead of the curve. He was living in a messianic era, in a perfect world where everyone's able to live that way. But we're not, right? We need breaths of fresh air. We can't go and work 20-hour shifts and remain focused. We need to pray in the morning, learn a bit of Torah each day, and then at work I can have the right mentality. If I don't have those few minutes every day of connecting, plugging in, our power is going to run low. Eventually we'll have solar energy and we can just renew our own energy as we go along, right? But for now, we need to be plugged in once in a while. Charge our batteries. So Korach, what this teaching first of all does is, Korach's not a terrible person. Not a rebel. He was he was a rebel. He did something wrong. He didn't have the right trust in God and Moses. But he was an idealist. He was a person who really wanted what God wanted and just had a mistaken ideology. So it puts him in a very positive spin, a very positive light. What the teaching also does is it fine-tunes last week's teaching. Right? Last week we spoke about how we encounter God within our lives. It adds one more very important element to that. That yes, the ultimate is to find God and encounter God within life, within the material world, in the physical mitzvahs. But we also need to derive inspiration in order to be able to do that. For my tefillin ritual to be meaningful, I have to have some sort of understanding of God. I have to learn the Torah texts that give me perspective. I have to pray a little bit. And that allows the tefillin, wrapping straps around my arm, to be a point of connection with something deeper, instead of just a ritual. And that's the same way with every single mitzvah. And so it gives us balance of material engagement with spiritual inspiration. And that, I think, to a large degree, sums up what the Rebbe stood for. He was at once, I want to say, old school Hasidic. He was deeply ingrained in Hasidic ideology, in faith. One of an Israeli writer, a very prominent writer, once wrote about the Rebbe after she had a meeting with him. Said he has the faith of a child with the brain of a genius, the mind of a genius. So the intellect was of a genius, but the faith of a little young child. And that's sort of, on the one hand, having this deep faith in God, having this, seeing the world from a higher perspective. The Rebbe always say that Torah comes first. And we have a conflict between Judaism and reality, or Judaism and my lifestyle. Judaism has to come first, because even if we're engaged in the world, it has to come from, first thing, you have to have the inspiration, you have to have living higher. And the Rebbe, if someone had a problem with their health, check your mezuzah. There's something, not that a wrong mezuzah will make you unhealthy, but there's some higher spiritual protection mezuzah gives, even if you're supposed to be unhealthy. And if you're unhealthy, it could be that there's a problem with your mezuzahs. People would write with financial issues to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would say, do you have a charity box in your office? How does that connect to the deal falling through? So the Rebbe was such a deep faith that there's a spiritual depth to the world that is guiding the world. On the other hand, such a focus on doing good. The Rebbe sent out his shluchim, emissaries. Go put on tefillin with people. Go set up outposts everywhere in the world so a Jew will have kosher food when they travel, so a Jew will have a place to come and call home. The Rebbe told people on college campuses, make a kosher dining hall just so Jewish guys will hang out with Jewish girls. Right? Simple, nothing spiritual about it. Just you're creating Jewish marriages. So very practical, just practical guidance, practical living, focusing on the mitzvahs. And this dichotomy, on the one hand, the deep spiritual insights, the philosophy, the faith, married and actually expressed in very practical wisdom, practical guidance. And that sort of became the model for a lot of the Rebbe's teachings. This idea is, you've heard it here a million times, right? I feel like every week I say the same thing. Almost because it's everywhere. This idea is Judaism summed up in a nutshell. But it's a unique lens of the Rebbe. And also in his guidance to people. So a takeaway is that we have to have both of these elements in our lives on a daily basis. I mean, we have to go out, go to work, go to coffee with our friends, deal with our relationships we have, spouse, children, friends. That's where life, where the battleground is. That's where we make the world a better place. That's where we achieve our mission. But in order for us to do that, we have to have a daily encounter with something above the fray. We have to spend a few moments in prayer, a few moments in Torah study, in meditation. Something that's going to give us a higher perspective. And so, if you have the choice, the timeline of the day should start off with something holy, something spiritual, and that sets a tone for everything. When you go into the fray, when you enter into the ring, you have the upper hand. So if you can set up in the morning, put a schedule, it can be 5 minutes, a prayer, a little Torah thought. You can go online, read something that's going to give you a perspective, shape your whole worldview you're above. And then go in there and bring God to the world, bring God to whatever you're encountering. You're having coffee with someone, make a blessing on that coffee. You brought God into that conversation. You can talk about something beyond politics with that person. Something about spiritual living and doing mitzvahs or whatever it's going to be. You've brought God into the encounter. So that's sort of a takeaway from this idea of Korach and Wrong. If you are around on Friday night, you're invited to join us, a special Shabbat dinner for Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's yard site, with Rebbe Simcha Weinstein. If you would like to go to the Ohel, to visit the Rebbe's gravesite, we went with the group yesterday. If you want to go this week or next week, Shabbos, we can't travel there, but let me know. And I'm going again, and if not me, someone else. Let me know if you want to make the trip there. It's a very special, unique place to pray, connect, and especially around the yard site. And we are, in a sense, inheritors of the Rebbe's vision. Either directly, those of us who were able to hear or learn directly from the text of the Rebbe, or indirectly, through the study that we do here. And so we have this sort of mission or mandate that we're given. And beyond living out in our own lives, it's almost a responsibility we have to impact others as well. Because the Rebbe would always push, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. And if you have something to give, give it. And so if you can think about one person who you know that you can share something with. It can be something you learned tonight, any Jewish idea, any enriching idea, a mitzvah. Start with one person. If there's one person I can think of that can get a boost, that I can share something with, then you are furthering this light. We'll go from there further and further and further, and spread out its tentacles to make the whole world brighter. And so we have that responsibility if we can live that out. And so I hope that we can keep spreading this light, the light of Torah, light of Judaism, light of God, to far-reaching places. And then we'll be able to complete this whole mission that's gone on for the last few thousand years. We can finally settle the score and bring it home.
That's a
It's in our hands. L'chaim.
That's a l'chaim.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi.